Hi lovely friends, welcome to the week of January 20th to 26th, 2021. It's another really big week of astrological energies and I hope that this forecast is helpful. In terms of its similarities to a weather report, I hope that it can help you be prepared mentally and emotionally for the kinds of energies we might be encountering over the next week and building up to the next month. It's a big time. It continues to be a big time. Before we begin, I want to send my respect to Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nations. I'm speaking to you from their lands, stolen and unceded. Big respect to their elders, past, present and becoming. Big shout out to all First Nations people who might be watching and to everyone everywhere who is tuning in. It's a massive time. I say that every week, I know, but it continues to be quite extraordinary. So obviously the week beginning January the 20th coincides with the US inauguration, and you may have already heard many astrologers talking about the incredible intensity of the astrology that coincides with this event. We have been building up to the conjunction of Mars and Uranus in Taurus, which happens on the 20th. Now, these two planets are potentially the most volatile in our solar system in terms of their energetic signatures. Mars is the god of war, of aggression, of conflict, of reactivity, of violent reaction, as well as on the more elevated side of its potential, its will and desire and the ambition and motivation to go after what we want, what we desire to achieve. Uranus is the planet of sudden shocks, crisis, chaos, disruptions, electrical energies that are shocking and catalytic, and they are also the kinds of shocks that cause us to experience some kind of liberation. Uranus is also the planet at its higher expression of innovation, of change that awakens. It is known as the Great Awakener. So it will throw things at us to wake us up and to liberate us from constraints that we cling to. As Mars and Uranus meet at 6 degrees of Taurus, this is a potentially explosive energy coinciding with the US inauguration and with all of the violence and the discord that has surrounded that event. You know, with this volatile martial energy, it is concerning to imagine what might unfold. One of the other things that's happening in concert with that conjunction is that Saturn and Jupiter are squaring Mars and Uranus in Taurus. Mars and Uranus are not comfortable in Taurus. They want to move forward. They want to make fast, speedy, radical, dramatic change. Taurus wants to move very, very slowly. Saturn is enforcing a kind of repressive, obstacle-laden, boundary-setting tension with Mars and with Uranus, but Jupiter is making everything bigger. It blows everything up. So we have this very strong dynamic of war, rebellion. That's the other thing. Uranus represents rebellion. War, Mars, rebellion, Uranus, Saturn, repressive control, and Jupiter making everything huge. The other thing that's happening on the 20th is that the moon is in Aries, and Aries is ruled by Mars. It is the sign of war, of the war god, and the moon in Aries can be quite provocative, and it has a surplus of frustrated energy that it often wants to trigger some kind of provocative response in others in order to gain a release of that energy. We will be sitting by and watching on the sidelines as this plays out in the world, particularly in the US. Strength and solidarity to stay in your centers as much as you possibly can. The best advice that I can give for all of us, and it will be affecting us each in different ways, and I might go into this briefly in terms of how it's going to affect the different rising signs. later, but it will affect all of us in different areas of our lives, and the best thing we can all do is to avoid reacting on provocations. There is a greater tendency that we may overreact to triggers. There will be triggers, and our responses may be much larger than they actually deserve to be. And we may also fall prey to provocation, and we may be prone to provoking. So as much as possible, if we can sit by on the sidelines and try and stay grounded, doing all the really great self-care practices that we possibly can. Check out the EFT video on my YouTube channel if you need some extra help with this. Obviously meditation, sitting in nature, walking, mindfulness in general. There are lots of good things that we can do to try and ground ourselves during this energy. We do have some good aspects kind of balancing out these forces, these energies at play from Venus and from Mercury, and they're going to be continuing to exert their influence over the week, which gives me some hope for how this might actually manifest productively. The chaos, the upheaval, the shocks, the potential violence, what we do see could break a chain of events that need to be liberated in order for us to be able to build something new, which is what all this Aquarian energy is asking us to do. We want to build something new. Uranus and Saturn, as I've mentioned previously, are both the rulers of Aquarius, and we are coming up in February to a major stellium in the sign of Aquarius, tropical Aquarius. And I'll talk about that more as we get closer to it, but we are building towards this time when we are really going to be putting the rubber to the road in terms of building something new. So Wednesday is a really charged day, and on the 21st we will have a lot of that still going on. But in fact, the moon will be at 6 degrees of Taurus conjunct Mars and Uranus. So the moon is exalted in Taurus. It's a very different feeling to the moon in Aries. And yet the moon is emotional, and the moon in Taurus may make us feel, with being conjunct Mars and Uranus in Taurus, the feeling of perhaps being prone to reacting emotionally to scenarios could be intensified. On the other side, there's the potential to really be able to see the power in what is being triggered, not triggered in a negative trigger way necessarily, but in the ways that those energies are being sparked, what they might be bringing us, what kind of insight we may gain from the ways in which these events are unfolding in our own lives and on the global stage. Also on the 21st, Mercury is trining the North Node and sextiling the South Node at exactly 19 degrees, the trine to the North Node. And that feels kind of amazing to me, because it suggests that there is this very even but challenging relationship between the way that we think about information and data, the way we're communicating, with this ongoing tension between our karma and our destiny collectively. It shows that we have this potential to understand something about what's going on, and a need to communicate it at some level. On January 23rd, we have the moon in Taurus still exalted, and it is trining Pluto in Capricorn at 24 degrees. That is a very powerful energy. Obviously, whenever Pluto's involved, it's powerful because Pluto is a planet that represents power. Also of hidden things rising to the surface, of the kinds of traumas and deeply painful transformative experiences that allow us to experience true riches. with the moon in Taurus exalted, trining, and trines are beautiful aspects that flow very, very easily. There's this potential to uncover deep material within our psyches that can be seen in light of an emotional revelation or a higher understanding of what those energies have brought us in our lives, what they have actually transformed for us. Neptune is also square the nodes exactly at 19 degrees. And we've been building up to that for some time. And of course, with Neptune, the planet of dreams, illusions, fantasies, conspiracy theories, suspicion, underhanded behavior, as well as visionary imagination, higher consciousness, forgiveness, compassion. It's the higher octave of love, interpersonal cosmic love as well. But we have been most definitely observing the ways in which illusion and an inability to understand what's really going on or what the truth is has been playing out as a major part of our destiny and our karma. We are seeing that become exact at 19 degrees on Saturday, January the 23rd. On that day, Mars is also square Jupiter. Again, Jupiter blows things up and makes them bigger, more exaggerated. Their effects are felt more widely. Their impact is much more exaggerated. Mars is the god of action, aggression, reactivity, violence, ambition, motivation, desire. So there is one potential that if there are incidents of conflict that are unfolding, that they could be exaggerated under that influence. However, for most of us, there's also this potential for it to be quite a liberating and empowering moment when our desire for something, our ambitions to achieve something are really fortified. Jupiter is also the planet of good luck, good fortune, of truth seeking, of a positive influence, of hope. So there's this feeling of confidence and good fortune in terms of what we're wanting to achieve. And that's where we want to direct our energy to, of course. We want to avoid the conflict side of things, avoid reaction, and focus on what it is we really, really want. Jupiter can help us do that. And that is, of course, that's my message all the time, is attune yourself to the higher vibration of what those planets represent, and they will help you to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. When we unconsciously flow with the kind of more immature parts of our nature, which are the lower expressions of the planets, then life just kind of throws us unconsciously, or we experience it unconsciously, the flow of events that are aligned with that lower consciousness thinking, which is why this weather stuff, astrological, celestial weather stuff, feels important to me, because if we can consciously continue to try and align to those higher expressions, we are helped. Even just the intention and the effort, even if we fail, we're still assisted by aligning ourselves with those higher expressions. The universe wants us to grow up. It really, really does. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do here. So on Sunday, January the 24th, of course, these are all in Australian Eastern Daylight times. Sunday, January the 24th, we have the Sun at 4 degrees of Aquarius, conjunct Saturn at 4 degrees of Aquarius. This is a really kind of serious energy, a heavier kind of energy, because Saturn is heavy. Of course, the Sun illuminates, but the Sun in its polarities of higher and lower expressions, at a higher expression, it represents our consciousness, our evolving consciousness, the kind of conscious awareness we are intending to evolve towards. At its lower expression, the Sun represents our ego. So if we are on autopilot, functioning in a kind of an ego state on that day, we may feel very frustrated by limitations, obstacles, hard work, kind of discipline and repression and limitation, which makes us feel at an ego level really frustrated and insecure. So the cure, the antidote to that, as I just mentioned, is to focus towards the expression of higher consciousness, literally just by intending it. You don't have to have a higher level of consciousness to be able to attune yourself to it. You just want to say that, okay, I'm going to try and be more conscious about how I approach my world and the things in my world. In that situation, Saturn is still hard work and serious issues, taking things seriously, but it really helps us to build something that is going to be long lasting and solid. It's a great day to kind of think strategically and in an organized way about what it is that is most important to you in terms of what you're trying to grow in this life, that needs work, that needs serious attention. That is going to be really powerful energy for being able to kind of actualize some of that, at least in terms of a plan. On that same day, we have Mars and Jupiter still squaring. Mars is at 8 degrees of Taurus and Jupiter is 7 degrees of Aquarius. And we have Venus sextiling Neptune at 19 degrees. That is really lovely energy as well. Sextiles are really beautiful and highly productive aspects, so they're just fantastic when they appear. And when they appear between Venus and Neptune, that's just golden, because they're both the planets of the two octaves of love. Venus is interpersonal love. She represents art, beauty, friendship, diplomacy, the way to have a beautiful material earthly life. Neptune is the planet of cosmic love, of higher expressions of human love, compassion, forgiveness, but also visionary imagination, fantastical worlds, incredible creative processes, music, poetry, etc., etc. So when these two planets are sextiling, there is this beautiful opportunity to create something beautiful, something that is visionary and uplifting and creative and powerful and really energetically transformative in some way. So that's absolutely beautiful on Sunday, the 24th of January. And I hope you all find some opportunities to use that energy in ways that feel really enriching. So on January the 25th, Monday, it is Moon Day. As you probably all know, all of the days of the weeks are named after planets. And interestingly, on Saturday, when we have Sun conjunct, no, that's on Sunday. Beg your pardon, we'll delete that. On Monday, Moon Day, we have a moon-packed day, which is really, really interesting. We have Venus quincunx the moon. That's a really uncomfortable aspect, which means that there may be some tension on that day in terms of our feelings and our emotions and our relationships. A discomfort that's hard to name. Quincunxes are really strange and mysterious kind of energies that it's hard to work out, like, why do I feel this way? Why am I feeling so strange? But they can also be quite productive when we kind of work through our understanding of what that is. Ask ourselves what's going on. It can be very really revealing and enlightening once we kind of get down a few layers to understand, why do I feel this way, this strange way in this situation emotionally in relation to this relationship? So we also have the moon at 19 degrees conjunct the north node of the moon in Gemini. So this is also really beautiful to have the moon, this emotional moon in the sign of Gemini, which is really about communication and about understanding all of the data and the information that is involved in this complex web of experiences. The moon in Gemini is more able to communicate what's going on, which is fantastic for that quincunx between the moon and Venus. We have a better ability to actually be able to probe down to understand what the dynamics are really comprised of. And with the moon conjunct the north node, it feels to me there's an enormous power to really feel into what our destiny is in this time, what we are meant to be doing, and how we can communicate in order to really kind of attuned to that energy. And also the ability emotionally to be able to perceive other people's perspectives with a greater clarity and with a greater power and a greater impact. Gemini is really, the high expression of Gemini is the ability to be able to see all sides evenly without forming judgments, to understand that the whole thing is a picture comprised of many, many parts and they're all important. So the moon conjunct the North Node is really beautiful there. We also have the moon trine Mercury. Again, this is a really amazing day for being able to communicate emotionally and to be able to and Mercury is in Aquarius, and of course Aquarius is a sign of society, of friends, of the social network, of our place within our own special communities, our own personal communities, and within society at large. And it is about what we can do to improve society, but most importantly by being true to ourselves, not by compromising ourselves or sacrificing ourselves in some kind of exhausting way. It's being true to ourselves and serving our community through that truth. So that is a really powerful day on Monday, with lots of potential for ideas and communication and the expression of emotions that can be really, really exciting and transformative. So on January 26th, which is quite a contentious day here in Australia, it is Australia Day, Invasion Day, a day which was only quite recently, only in the last 30 years, established to celebrate our collective identity as Australians. However, that date was chosen to be the day that Captain Cook landed in Botany Bay and established the colony of Australia, displacing Indigenous peoples and beginning a really tragic history, which, in my personal opinion, we should be transforming very, very quickly, and I don't celebrate Australia Day for that reason. So I'm always interested to see what the astrology is saying on this day, and it is an interesting day of astrology that continues on from the events that we have been experiencing over this week. On January the 26th, we have the Sun squaring Uranus in Taurus. The Sun in Aquarius at 6 degrees and Uranus in Taurus at 6 degrees. Now, as I mentioned, the Sun can relate to the ego and Uranus can relate to rebellion. So there can be this a volatile kind of energy and a reactivity between identities that are very attached to their beliefs, in terms of what they think their rights are, what they think they have to fight to protect, what they have to rebel against. And then on the other side, of course, there's this growing sense of consciousness which can be expanded through innovative Uranian thinking and the willingness to think outside the box and to try something different. On that same day, we have Saturn approaching its square to Uranus. Saturn is at 4 degrees and Uranus is at 6 degrees, and this is just continuing this building energy that will begin the first of 3 exact squares in February, and we'll do another update on that down the track. But also on January the 26th, we have Saturn sextile Chiron, Saturn at 4 degrees and Chiron at 5 degrees. And this to me is a very interesting signature for this day, because Chiron is the wounded healer. It represents the place where we are wounded and where we need to heal, and where our wound can make us greater, where it can be the source of our talent and our abilities and our success, and what we have to pass on to others that can allow everyone to grow stronger and more empowered. That's Chiron. So for Chiron to be sextiling, and as I mentioned, a sextile is a really beautiful and extremely productive aspect. We have Saturn, the god of hard work and of time and of reality and of discipline and obstacles and obstructions, sextiling the planet of healing. So the kind of frustrations that we may experience that day, and of course frustrations come with the territory when Saturn's involved, they are allowing us to identify what the wound is and to be able to through that discomfort, take some kinds of action which are going to help us to move forward towards healing and towards growing more mature and more heroic. Because Chiron was the teacher of heroes, and he was only able to teach heroes by being deeply wounded himself. And we are still deeply wounded in this country, and we need to heal it, and we need to be building heroes, and there are plenty of them out there. So this is a really interesting reflection on this day, something that gives me some hope. Another way of describing this energy from a positive kind of vibration is that there is a power to be really kind of proactive with the sun squaring Uranus, being really proactive about making positive change. I mean, I think that's really the message throughout all of this. Uranus wants us to change, so if we can be proactive about it and choose what we want to change, that we know we want to change. We know that there are parts of our lives that are really in need of a bit of a shift up and a bit of an improvement, and in terms of being able to realize our deeply held dreams for the future and for our own lives, we know there are certain things that have to change. And if we do those things voluntarily and introduce them little by little, step by step, consistently, we can be really kind of surfing with these energies and getting the assistance of the waves. That's what this is all about from my perspective. It's all trying to help us, and if we can attune to that helpful side of these planetary energies, we're using the least amount of energy. If we're fighting them, if we're fighting the negative things that are happening to us, and this is a thing to remember as well, that Uranus will throw spanners in the works. It just does. We also have Mercury in the shadow of its retrograde period. It entered its shadow on the 15th, and it's going to go retrograde in Aquarius on the 30th of January. And that will last for quite a while. So wherever you may be noticing, kind of weird technical glitches, any signs that you're getting that computers may be playing up, or cars playing up, or communication difficulties, or sort of strange things, pay attention to those, because we're in the shadow period. It's like we get this kind of warning time that says, okay, here are some of the things you need to be watching during this period, and you need to be prepared for and taking into account when Mercury goes retrograde. So that's a good little moment to just be noticing what's going on, and maybe you need to put your car in for a service, or whatever it might be. So I had to leave that in there. I wonder if you heard it. I've been having this really crazy thing, speaking of Mercury in its shadow and all the Uranian energy. I'm having this weird voice just appearing from my iPad, whether it's on or off. It's currently off, sitting on my desk at the moment, and randomly every few hours it just announces a planet to me. That was the sun. So we are all obeying the rules of the sun at the moment. And the sun is in Aquarius, and Aquarius wants us to evolve into a fairer and more enlightened society, and to be more truly empowered as individuals in order to create this golden age, which we are moving towards slowly but surely. This is a really tough week for some of us more than others, and just sitting by on the sidelines is going to be interesting enough. We want to be able to attune ourselves to the energies that will allow us to do what we are able to harness for ourselves, to be able to innovate, to change, to avoid reactivity, to think about what it is that we really, really want to create. It's that Martian energy. Rather than fight, what do we want to do, and how do we need to do it, and how can we innovate? Lots of self-care practices, kindness, generosity, an open mind, Gemini North Node. Be mindful that everybody has a story, and everybody's story is making up the whole picture. So avoiding judgment where we can will really, really help. And, I do feel very positive about what is unfolding here, although with that Uranian rebellious energy and that Martian aggressive volatility, part of that change involves some difficult processes and passages, but they are going to wake us up to what needs to change and to where the changes really need to happen. So don't lose faith, my dear friends. Keep in mind that the universe is on our side, actually, if we attune to that side of things. Of course, if we attune to the other side of things and believe that it's against us, it most certainly is against us. There's no doubt about that. Both are true. It totally depends on what you choose to believe. It's part of the mystery of this world that just blows my mind. And believe me, I've tried both sides. I spent a lot of time believing that the universe was against me, and it certainly was. But yeah, it works just as well believing the other side. And it's much more enjoyable, much more exciting, much more empowering, and I highly recommend it. So I thought I might do a quick little addition to this forecast that will give you an idea about how the Mars-Uranus conjunction and the square with Saturn and Jupiter might be affecting each rising sign. What kinds of things you can look out for, where you can apply these energies to the best effect in your life, because they will be playing out in different areas of our lives for each different rising sign. So if you are an Aries rising, then you have the Mars-Uranus conjunction in your second house of finances, the money you earn, self-worth, your possessions, how you make money and what you value in life, your resources, your abilities, the abilities through which you are able to improve. And having those two planets in that area can potentially suggest some shocks and disruptions in the area of finances. It may also suggest that there are some amazing breakthroughs and fortunate opportunities that emerge. Uranus is the unexpected, so it is whatever we're not really expecting. And yet, if we're kind of working consciously with these energies, we can definitely experience some positive outcomes in that area, especially in relation to how money and resources might be coming to you from your networks, through your friendship circles, through your community, because you have Saturn and Jupiter squaring those two planets from the 11th house of good fortune, which is why you may well be experiencing some good fortune in the area of finances and resources. But this is a square, so it is a tense aspect, but it's a manifesting aspect. So really paying attention to your community and your networks and thinking about how you can innovate in the area of resources and finances and self-worth. Whatever triggers emerge in this area are helping you to understand how you can grow this part of your life. So if you have Taurus as your rising sign, then you have Mars and Uranus in your first house conjunct. This is really, really powerful. This is a call to action. It is saying, okay, this is a time to make change in relation to your identity, your body, your health, your vitality, who and how you want to be in this world. And that is a tremendously exciting opportunity. However, if there has been some resistance in that area, and of course Taurus is the sign that is the slowest to change, it is the most famously stubborn and resistant, doesn't want to do what anybody tells it to do. So there may be a resistance to developing a really good health regime that's going to lead you feeling vital and alive and healthy. If that's the case, if you are resisting that, then you could experience some accidents or unexpected mishaps that force you to focus on your health, because that's what Uranus tends to do. And when Mars is involved, you know, that could be more dangerous accidents, you know. So I highly recommend you look into the things that you have been thinking about, that you want to take action on but are resisting. Take baby steps and start implementing even the smallest things, and you can really ameliorate the impact of the potential for accidents. You are also having that square between those two planets in your first house Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius are in your 10th house. So again, there is this kind of tension between your sense of identity and how and who you are in the world in relation to your career. And in terms of your career house being in Aquarius, there is also this relationship between your community, your peers, and how that relationship plays out in terms of your ideas about yourself or the actions that you might want to take in relation to self-improvement, self-development. And that square may feel really tense with from the aspect of career, and yet it's incredibly productive. Taurus, you have so much to transform in this year of Saturn-Uranus squares. So be careful of accidents, be careful, pay attention to what you're doing, and really kind of try and implement as many good self-care things for yourself as possible. Remember, diet is self-care, exercise is self-care, meditation, whatever the things are, take care of yourself. And be innovative and creative about doing it, and it will be really, really wonderful for you, like amazing. So yeah. All right, Gemini rising. You have Mars and Uranus in your 12th house. This suggests that you may experience some real flashes of insight that are quite spiritual in nature. You may also experience some kind of shocking events, situations that might place you in the context of hospitals or prisons. You may know somebody who ends up in hospital. You may have some kind of inspiration and insight in relation to ways that you want to contribute to the greater good through some kind of charity work. At the worst, expression of these energies is that if you are sabotaging yourself in a really detrimental way, you could experience some events that really are going to liberate you from that, but not in a fun way. Mars and Uranus are explosive, and the 12th house was traditionally considered the house of self-undoing. So if you are self-sabotaging, they may create some kind of volatile moment that forces you to change. Remember that Uranus is the planet of liberation. It's the great awakener. So although it may feel shocking, it could be a really amazing thing to emerge for you. Now, Jupiter and Saturn are squaring those two planets from your 9th house, which suggests that this is a very spiritual moment for you. However it manifests, there is something quite profound happening, a deep insight into the way the events in your own life are connected to a bigger picture, and how there is a divine consciousness that is at play here. So if you are prone to self-sabotage, as we all are, geez, just that thing of focusing your intention towards a spiritual revelation that can come from these innovative and disruptive energies in your house of seclusion, of solitude, of the time that you take to yourself to be spiritual or to be creative or to be secure in your home in the sign of Taurus. So this is very beautiful as well. And I am very excited to see how that actually plays out. I think it's going to be a very spiritual moment potentially for you. Okay, so if you have Cancer rising, then you have the Mars-Uranus conjunction in your 11th house of friends, good fortune, community, society, networks, markets. That suggests some, volatile activity in terms of, finances and friendships. But it is in the house of good fortune, and yet there could be unexpected, shocking kind of events emerging, turns of event. You have the square from Saturn and Jupiter in your 8th house, which is a more difficult house. It is the house of transformation, of karmic entanglements, of the things that we can't control in life and what they bring us. It's the house of other people's money as well. So you have this square between what you can get from other people and the situations that you can't control with other people, and then the way that you respond to your communities, to your friends, to your societies. And with Uranus and Mars there, you want to avoid reactive responses, but also think creatively and innovatively, and try to do things differently in the context of friendships and communities and peer networks. So that you can transform something in that area that will allow you to really benefit from the good fortune that might come to you from others. But something has to change here in your relationships with friends and communities. Something may be falling away. Something has to change, and innovation is required here, and a transformative one. And it may not be easy, because the 8th house is not an easy house. It's the most powerful house in the zodiac. And it is, it can be associated with deep psychological material and with our experiences of traumas, but it is transformative. So keep that in mind, Cancer rising. Okay, Leo ascendants, you have the Mars-Uranus conjunction in your 10th house of career, which suggests that there are, unexpected things that could happen in your career. Or in however you show up in the world, however you're known in the world. And also that there is a potential to think about what you really want in the area of career and be innovative and creative and change up the way you do things in order to benefit from that kind of those career opportunities and innovations. You are having these planets squared by Saturn and Jupiter, I beg your pardon, in the 7th house, which suggests that your relationships are really crucial to those changes and innovations that are happening in career. So there is a real kind of an emphasis on how you relate and how you might need to innovate in your relationships. What can you change up? How can you do things differently in your relationships, both personally and professionally? And they will really liberate you from some kind of experience in your career that may have felt constraining, and in relationships simultaneously. So yeah, doing things differently in career and in relationships. Virgo rising, you have Mars and Uranus in your 9th house, squared by Saturn and Jupiter in your 6th house. Now, the 9th house is the house of God in traditional astrology, and the 6th house was considered the house of misfortune, the house of slavish work and ill health. Having your 6th house in Aquarius suggests that there is a need now, especially with this square with Uranus and Mars, there's a need to readjust the dynamic or the balance between how much you give to others and how much you are allowing yourself to be true to yourself. There is an opportunity here to be kind of rebellious against a status quo which has kept you quite stuck and unhappy in a work scenario or in a health scenario, because Mars and Uranus are in your 9th house of God, of spirituality, of higher thinking, of teaching, of foreign cultures and travel, the law. Yeah, it suggests an ability to tune into a higher place of consciousness that allows you to adjust your Aquarian approach to the 6th house so that you are doing what is true to you. You are rebelling against the status quo that has made you feel like a slave, and you are being true to yourself and working out how you can give more truly of yourself into your work so that you don't feel like a slave, so that you are serving the world through your gifts. That is the Aquarian motto, really. And having Uranus in the 9th house suggests that there's a spiritual transformation that could occur through the chaotic events that might turn up in your life during this period that allow you to create some kind of liberation in the area of work and health. So that's pretty exciting. Virgo rising. Libra rising, you have the Mars-Uranus conjunction in your 8th house. That suggests that you may well be seeing or experiencing some kind of shocking events that are related to issues of life and death, related to issues of trauma, related to issues of deep psychology, transformation, or other people's money potentially. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's happening to you, but it might be somebody close to you in your life where you're seeing shocking events play out that are, make you feel a sense of grief. But they are also, those events, whatever is happening for you or for others in this area, are very powerfully transformative and liberating. Although they may be shocking at the time, eventually they will unfold to awaken you from places in which you may have felt karmically entangled to a degree that you were unable to find freedom. This is challenging stuff. As I mentioned, the 8th house is the most powerful and the most difficult house in the zodiac, but it is the most powerful. It's a place where transformation occurs. Now you are having these two planets squared from Saturn and Jupiter in the 5th house, which is a really beautiful square to the 8th house. The 5th house is the house of creativity, of good sex, of risk-taking, of children, of expressing oneself, of play. So there's this connection between those two planets in Aquarius in that house, which is saying that if there are challenging experiences taking place for you in that kind of 8th house energy of karmic entanglements or other people's money potentially, you are able to take some risks. You can be creative. You can find pleasure. It's the house of pleasure. I forgot to mention that. That's really important. You may find great pleasure in your connections with friends and with community that allow you, and those connections there's a tension nonetheless in the square between Saturn and Jupiter and Uranus and Mars. However, it is a manifesting tension. So the discomfort that you experience can allow you to create some really powerful transformation in this moment that allows you to creatively express yourself, to take some risks in that area of transformation, to innovate, and to find support from friends and peers and networks. So yeah, that's a potent one, but it's also really beautiful. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens for you, Libra rising. Let me know what's coming up for you. My goddaughter's Libra rising, and she had some really shocking news last week. And yeah, thinking of you all. All right, Scorpio rising, you have the Uranus-Mars conjunction in your 7th house. So, wow, look out for what kind of interesting things might be taking place in your relationships. Potentially shocking, unexpected experiences, that could well be triggering, of course, because it is a Mars-Uranus conjunction. The advice remains true from the main forecast. Try and avoid reactive anger to responding to triggers in relationships in a way that could just prolong or exaggerate a situation of conflict. What you do want to do is to do things differently wherever and however you possibly can in relationships. If you always do this particular relationship one way and they're giving you lip and you usually would respond or ignore whatever way you might deal with the situation, take a step back, a deep breath in, and maybe just walk into another room and say to yourself, okay, what could I do differently here? How could I be idiosyncratic, creative, eccentric in this scenario? Uranus is the planet of eccentricity. So try something different, do something weird if you have to. You can just break the circuit in some totally eccentric way. If you don't know what else to do something weird. It will just break the tension and something really remarkable might well come out of it. Now, this is particularly the case for you in the context of family because Jupiter and Saturn are squaring Mars and Uranus in the 4th house for you. So you want to be thinking about what is the best for the greater good in your family. You may be inclined to respond from a feeling of being hurt personally, but because those two planets are in your fourth house in Aquarius, it suggests that you do want to think about like what's good for everyone here, and how you can change the way you do things to create a better outcome for yourself and for others. So it is, it's always a challenging one when you have family and relationships so potently emphasized here. But as always, and with all these things, there is an enormous potential for liberation and for an awakening to occur so that you understand something really important about the way you have been doing relationships, about the way you can do relationships, and how that might impact your experience in your family. And in order perhaps to be able to resolve some old stories that have just been running in the background. There's a moment of potential illumination that can occur here, that occurs through discomfort and difficulty and the tension that exists in family and relationships. Remember the opportunity, Scorpio rising. There is absolutely a really powerful potential here to shift something in family and in relationships. All right, Sagittarius rising, you have the Mars-Uranus conjunction in your 6th house, the house of work and ill health, traditionally speaking. So you want to be very, 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 very careful about your health and not burn yourself out at work. You want to avoid arguments at work. You want to avoid any kind of really kind of rash actions in either of those areas in terms of health and in terms of taking just doing risky activities that could result in accidents. Yeah, avoid arguments at work basically. And the positive aspect of this is that although some health issues may be triggered with Mars and Uranus conjunct in the 6th house, that is nonetheless going to help you really have a bit of a breakthrough in that area to innovate something in order to create a kind of a new relationship to your health or to your work, where you have been feeling stuck at work, where you may have been experiencing criticism or self-criticism. There is an ability for a breakthrough, basically a flash of insight that comes through the kind of the chaos and the disruptions that occur with these planetary aspects this week. So yeah, a great opportunity for insight and change and liberation, but do be very, very careful to avoid arguments and accidents where you possibly can. They're being squared for you from the 3rd house by Jupiter and Saturn, which suggests that you do need to be really, really careful about your communication. Don't react with colleagues or with siblings. Be careful of vehicles, accidents, mindful of just kind of keeping things on a on an even keel, and kind of staying local perhaps. In terms of communication, thinking about what is good for everyone. Be careful of reacting from too personal a place. Again, just kind of take yourself away and think, how could I do this differently? How could I be more disciplined in my communication as well? You've got Saturn in the 3rd house, which is saying, okay, so think about how you phrase this perhaps. Jupiter is wanting you to seek the truth, and it is really kind of shedding some positive influence on this dynamic as well. So the tension is there, but the opportunities to really shift something are definitely highlighted here. Sagittarius rising. Okay, so Capricorn rising. You have the Mars-Uranus conjunction in your 5th house of pleasure, of children, of play, of creativity, of self-expression, of risk-taking. You may well have already been experiencing some kind of incredible shake-ups in your romantic life, in your creative life, in your ability to experience pleasure in your life. And the fifth house is also the house of good fortune. So it's kind of ameliorated that potential for like shocking disruptions. Then the disruptions may be less pronounced for you, but they could definitely allow you to have some really exciting creative breakthroughs. Mars is what we want, it's our desire, and Uranus is like innovation. So, you know, if I were you, I would be definitely channeling my energies into kind of creative things and into pleasure and play, and doing things differently in ways that might enhance your experience of pleasure and play. It's not a time for anyone to take big risks, but if small risks that you can take to enjoy yourself more in your life or to be more creative, they are certainly improved. You have these two planets squared from your second house of resources, of the money you make through work, of self-worth, and yeah, what you value in life. So there is this kind of tension between, yeah, what do you value in life? What are your resources? And how do you need to shake up your relationship to pleasure, play, and creativity in ways that might actually enhance your ability to thrive financially or thrive in terms of self-worth? What needs to change? What innovations can you make? Where can you be creative? Yeah, that's a really kind of a pretty exciting one for Capricorn risings. You are, you know, really kind of coming into an exciting time where a lot of the challenges you've been experiencing are starting to bear fruit. So enjoy. I hope you are. All right, Aquarius rising. You have the Mars-Uranus conjunction happening in your fourth house of family. Family and the home, the place, your most private place. You may well be experiencing some unexpected situations occurring in family or in the context of your home. Things that may be, you know, causing you to take action that you would not have taken ordinarily, but something goes wrong and it leads you to renovate or something like that. Or there may be experiences that you are encountering in the context of family that are perhaps triggered, that are relating to dynamics of conflict, and whatever is stimulated in this conjunction here is allowing some kind of liberation to occur, an awakening to occur in the context of family and in the context of understanding your place in family and what you contribute to family, how your sense of self and your identity is actually playing out in the context of your relationships. There's a really powerful dynamic here. You have the square of those two planets coming from the first house of the self. So this is enormously powerful. This is saying that it's really, really crucial for you to be yourself, to be true to yourself, not to hold yourself back. Often we kind of present a kind of a version of ourselves in our families because they expect us to be something that we perhaps were when we were children, and we continue to deliver on that old promise. It no longer works for us. This is time to show who you are, but not in a way that is aggressive or conflict oriented. You want to be centered in who you are. Your first house is in Aquarius, your Aquarius rising, with Saturn and Jupiter in your first house. This begins this new era of being authentic, of being true to yourself, and of being able to really benefit others, benefit your community, your family, your society by being really true and authentic to yourself. And that starts, of course, with family because it's the smallest group. So you really, I think that is really the message for you. Be true to yourself. Think about the greater good, but be true to yourself because that is the way to really serve the greater good. And beware of triggers in family, and potentials for arguments and aggressive reactivity, and think instead, okay, if you are triggered, step away, take a little moment to go, okay, this is really familiar territory, really familiar terrain. How could I do this a little bit differently? And for you, you might want to bring in some beauty somehow. Maybe suggest watching a movie that's really beautiful, or put on some music, or make everybody a delicious cup of tea with some honey in it. You know, generosity. Your fourth house is in Taurus, so it wants to live a good life. So just do something different that will shift the vibe, and the whole thing shifts. Be true to yourself. So, Pisces rising, you have the Mars-Uranus conjunction happening in your third house of communication, siblings, travel, short distance travel, colleagues, but primarily communication. So obviously you want to be cautious about your communication. You want to avoid reactive conversations, of responding to people who may be triggering you just by saying whatever comes to your mind. You want to try and find as much grounding as you possibly can before you communicate difficult subjects. You might actually be best to just sit on your reactions. You have Mars and Uranus being squared by Saturn and Jupiter in your 12th house, and the 12th house rules solitude, it rules solace, it's the place where we retreat to resolve our karma, so to speak. It is, you know, it's the place of the womb where we are generating ourselves before we give birth to something new. So in having those two planets there squaring your Mars and Uranus, I would say it is a really, really good time to retreat and perhaps write, to journal, to really write down your feelings, because the 12th house, I find, is a really powerful house for creativity, you know, for writing, for any kind of creative practice that requires solitude. It's enormously productive, and it is a very spiritual house because it is that house of the kind of the resolution and the transformation of karma. So be careful of communication and try to do things a little bit differently in that regard. It also, the third house rules day-to-day life to some extent. I mean, the sixth house certainly rules the everyday routines and rituals of life. But the third house is kind of your local day-to-day kind of circuits, like what you do in your neighborhood, so to speak. How you worship. It's also the house of the goddess. Having this kind of innovative, chaotic, disruptive energy happening in the third house suggests that there's quite a mystical and intuitive and magical potential in this time for you. You know, certainly if you can be mindful about reactive communication, if you can be creative by taking that energy into that sort of quiet reflection. And look out for the magic. I find this is another great bit of advice for everybody, is watch for the magic. And the more we pay attention and look out for it, the more present and potent and enlarged it becomes in our lives. I'm wishing you all a really amazing week ahead. I know it could be extremely challenging at times, but hang in there. Trust that it is trying to help you achieve exactly what you are setting out to achieve. Align your intention and your attention towards those higher vibrations of the planetary energies that we're all receiving all the time. We're getting all of it. We're choosing what we want to align ourselves to. So big love, good luck. I am so looking forward to seeing you next week.